What's up, my fellow Shield Brothers? Shield Brother 6 here with yet another day in the life. Today we'll be talking about the kit and armament of the ancient Celt. This is, on the left, a replica of a Celtic warrior's garments and armament, which you can see in the German museum at the Rodheim Biber. Let us continue with today's lesson. Tribal warfare. Tribal warfare was a very stable, important part of the Celtic life. The scope of this video, by the way, does not extend to the Britons and Gales of the sub-Roman to the medieval period because that would just be too much to cover. I mean, the Celts themselves are such diverse people, that's already a lot to cover in one video, so just that disclaimer. Celtic tribes fought amongst each other, and sometimes they allied themselves with the Romans, the Greeks, and other peoples against other Celtic tribes. Tribal warfare appears to have been a regular feature of all Celtic societies. Well, maybe not all, but most. A very significant amount of Celtic societies relied on warfare and a warrior society. While epic literature depicts this as more of a sport focused on raids and hunting, rather than organized territorial traditional conquest, the historical record is more of tribes using warfare to exert political control and harass rivals, for economic advantage, and in some instances, to conquer territory. The tribal periods. There are three distinct periods, for say, that you can group the Celts into. The first is the Hallstatt period, which is the 12th to 6th centuries BC. The Hallstatt culture is the earliest to be identified as associated with Celtic culture, spreading from north of the Alps west into France, southern Britain, and the Iberian Peninsula. The earlier phases of the Hallstatt area fall into the Bronze Age. And then there's the Latienne period, which is the 6th to 1st centuries of the BC. The Latienne period saw changing patterns of warfare. At the beginning of the Latienne period, warfare was likely conducted on a small scale between elite warriors, perhaps in chariots, wielding a new type of Celtic longsword. During the succeeding centuries, the design of the sword changed, characteristically becoming shorter, single-edged, and lacking a thrusting point, designed purely to make a cut, although the Hallstatt area sword had also been primarily a slashing weapon, and greater regional variation in swords started to appear. And then the third period, continuation into Ireland. That includes the Roman conquest, which eventually extinguished the independence of all the Celtic peoples, except in Ireland and in far north Britain, such as the Picts of Scotland, or what would become Scotland. After the Roman era, however, only in the British Isles, therefore, could there be said to still exist a distinctly Celtic style of warfare and society. Ireland was the last region to adopt the Latienne mode of Celtic technology and warfare, and with a small and less dense population than that of the British or continental Celts, may have sustained the area of small-scale elite combat, such as Hallstatt, for much longer. The Gallic Wars. The Gallic Wars were a series of military campaigns waged by the Roman proconsul Julius Caesar against Gallic tribes, lasting from 58 BC to 51 BC. The Romans would also raid Britannia and Germania, but these expeditions never developed into full-scale invasions as it did in Gaul. The Gallic Wars culminated into the decisive Battle of Alesia in 52 BC, in which a complete Roman victory resulted in the expansion of the Roman Republic over the whole of Gaul, which would change the Celtic life forever and Roman life. The wars paved the way for Caesar to become the first sole ruler of the Roman Republic. The best-known Roman source for descriptions of Celtic warfare is Julius Caesar himself in his commentaries on the Gallic Wars, Commentari de Ballo Gallico, in which he describes the methods of warfare of both the Gauls and the Britons. Here on the left is a sculpture of a chainmail-armored, torque-wearing Gaulish warrior wielding a Celtic shield depicted in the classic Greco-Roman style, from Verchiers, France, estimated to be the 1st century BC. The Falcata. With a large, inwardly curving, single-edged blade rather than like a kukri, the Falcata was an extremely devastating weapon and a very prominent Celtic weapon, very unique to their society. Hilts were iron, hook-shaped, and sometimes decorated with stylized horse or bird head pommels. The origin of the Falcata was pre-Roman and is likely to have been a development of the ancient Greek sickle-shaped sword or corpus, if you remember from my kit and armament of the ancient Greek soldier, they have a very similar weapon, the kopis, which I showed in that video. The Celtic troop types and organization. Because there are so wide range, I just took the most prominent and most generalized, for the most part, weapons used and troop types. The infantry and cavalry. Infantry. Tacitus, who was a Roman scribe, wrote that the strength of the Celts lies in their infantry, but some had a very strong cavalry arm and others continued to use chariots. And there you can see a Celtic sword. The cavalry. In earlier times, the Celts would employ the chariot, although chariots had fallen out of use in the continental Europe from the end of the 3rd century BC. Caesar found that they remained significant in British warfare, and his descriptions are, if his descriptions are to be believed, he encountered in Britain an army in transition, possessing cavalry but still with an elite fighting force from chariots. He described how these warriors would throw javelins from their vehicles before abandoning them to fight on foot, returning to them in order to retreat or redeploy if needed. Gauls are said to have commented that they themselves had formerly used chariots, but had abandoned them by this time. So even the Gauls said, yeah, we used to use chariots, but not anymore. So the cavalry and the chariot used to be a very distinct part of Celtic warfare. The others, the navy. When you think of Celts, you do not think of a navy. While relatively little has been written about Celtic warfare at sea, the Gaulish Veneti, a tribe occupying the south of Brittany, fiercely resisted Caesar's Romans both on land and at sea. They were said to have constructed ships of oak with tough leather sails well adapted for plying the rough Atlantic Sea, which is very unique for a Celtic culture to be using large-scale naval ships. They were also unique and devastating mercenaries. Celtic warriors served as mercenaries in many armies of the classical periods. The best known were those who joined Hannibal in his invasion of Italy during the Second Punic War, and who contributed to his victories at Lake Trasimene and Cannae. Celtic mercenaries fought on the sides of both the Greeks and Romans as well. When a branch of Brennus's invasion force to the east and crossed the Rubicon, they founded a Celtic state in Asia Minor known as Galatia. Galatia became well known as a source of mercenaries throughout the eastern Mediterranean region, which reminds me a lot of the later Viking Age, where they become very stable parts of the mercenaries, and they also start to settle in other parts of the world, and they were even personal bodyguards to the emperor at later times. The fortifications of the Celts. Large stores of slingstones, aerodynamically shaped by adding clay, have been found in southern British hill forts of Maiden Castle, which indicates that slings might also have played a role in the conflicts between Celtic tribes there, probably within sieges, so you could just, knock the guy out that's trying to climb over your wall. The Latian period also saw the development of multivallate fortresses, protected by formidable earthworks walls, as well as the Merce, Delicious, and Rattler, I cannot pronounce that word. The larger settlements in Gaul were described by Julius Caesar as Poland, and the term is now used to designate the large pre-Roman towns that existed all across western and central Europe, many of which grew from Celtics. The Celts had influence on a lot of different people and warfares, which I will now describe to you. The Celts influenced Thracian warfare and the adoption of certain longswords by the Triballi. For example, although this was not universally among the Thracians, but they did contribute their longswords. Another weapon, the Sicca, was called the Thracian sword, considered Thrace's national weapon, although the sword's ultimate origin was the Hallstatt culture, and the Thracians may have adopted or inherited it from them. Also, the Dacian. The Celtic Germanic Bastarnae were an important part of the Dacian army. Celtic-type weapons were in use, such longswords and round shields. The Celts played a very active role in Dacia and Celtic Scordorsy, were among the tribes allied to the Dacians, so they were a very tight-knit unity, and they helped each other build a lot. The Illyrians. Celts affected the Illyrians in cultural and material aspects, as some of them were Celticized, especially the tribes in Dalmatia and Pannonia. A type of wood oblong iron box was introduced to the Celts. Also, culture influences abounded due to the fact that the Illyrians were also descended from the Hastite. The Greeks adopted the long oval Celtic shield called the Thureos in the 3rd century BC. The ultimately led to the development of two new types of troops, the Thurophio and the Thurocati, two unique troops used by the ancient Greeks that developed from the Celts. The Romans, of course. The Iberian Peninsula, comprising modern Spain and Portugal, was a place of diverse cultures in classical times, which had various tribes who could not always be placed firmly as Celts, for say, because there were so many unique tribes. Iberian Celts fought for Hannibal against the Romans in the Second Punic War. The best known of their weapons is the Falcata, which I talked about earlier. It is a short curved sword with the edge innermost and a closed hilt. The Roman legionaries Gladius was originally called the Gladius Hispanius, and was based on another Celtiberian sword type. So even the Gladius, which I talked about in the Roman video, descended from another type of Celtic weapon. And if that doesn't show how much the Celts influenced the entire whole of Europe and Asia Minor around them, I don't know what does. And here in this map you can see the 6 modern Celtic nations, which is Alba, Scotland, Erie, which is Ireland, Mannan, the Isle of Man, Syria, Wales, Cerno, Cornwall, and Breeze, which is Brittany. And if I butchered those words, I apologize. The map of the early Celts. Here you can see a map of the early Celts, their influences, and their movements. And if you want, you can pause the video here so you can investigate this closer. It shows the Proto-Celtic unified groups, as well as early Slavic, early Celtic, and early Italic tribes. And then it shows the precursors of the Illyrians, the Hastite, the Latian, and everything else I showed. So if you want to pause here, it's a really good map of the early Celts and their influences that you can look at. Well, as always, thank you for watching. This has been another day in the life video. This has been Shield Brother 6. And if you like this content, please go ahead and leave a like in the bottom section below. If you do not, please leave me a dislike. And if you have a comment, a suggestion, or just want to say hi, please leave something in the comment section down below. And as always, I'll catch y'all next time.